All right. So the reason I chose this topic is, again, with all the observations and things going on this month with Black History Month, this month also being the month in which the National Day of Love is celebrated, I figured what better thing to talk about than the expression of love, the expression of love that can be summarized in legacy, right? Your legacy, generational planning, and things along those lines. If you join me in we've been doing these webinars really for since 2020. So this is 4 years, coming up 4 years since the beginning of COVID. We've been doing webinar series, and typically in the month of February, I've covered topics such as understanding life insurance, where we talk about the uses, the strategies, the perspectives, and the different types of life insurance policies. I've done understanding annuities, which is a different form of insurance. Instead of it, being available for death, it's typically available for longevity. So annuities can be used as a way to provide guaranteed income much later in your retirement. Moving forward, we've had more conversations on planning with insurance. And last year we did generational planning, legacy planning for the generations, where we talked a bit about estate planning, but focused more on the legacy. So this is going to complement that previous experience where we're engaging families in conversations around finance and starting to break down barriers on how families can become more equipped and more adept into creating that legacy. So it's a step further than just simply talking about estate documents, which we'll be sure to mention. But this is a perfect presentation. It's a perfect experience for those who are looking to make differences, not just in their individual lives, but in the lives of their families. So we have a tale of two families here. We're going to be talking about the Wilsons, and we're going to be talking about the Millers. So as you can see, the Wilsons is going to start off with baby boomer couple, Wayne and Wendy. Wayne and Wendy, they had two children, William and Whitney. And then William and Whitney both were married, and now they have their own children. Wesley, Wilhelmina, Whitney, and Wilbur have Willow and Weston. So the Millers, on the other hand, we have the Millers that is Mitchell and Mary. And then Mitchell and Mary, they had Maureen and Michael. Maureen is now married to Melvin, who is 43. Maureen is 28, and Michael is 25. So focusing on the Wilsons. So the history behind the Wilsons are that the husband or the leader, Wayne, is running the family business. So this business was started from Wayne's father, the construction company, which has now grown to being able to employ 18 different employees, of which Wendy is also a part-time employee and working with the family business. It's very important for them to, keep that family business in operation, and that's, created their livelihood. But it's also been able to create a living for their two kids. So for Wayne and Wendy, family heritage is a very, very important aspect. At the family gatherings and, whenever they get together as a family, they're constantly telling different stories of how the business was founded, how hard Wayne's parents worked to get the business going, and how they've always had a strong commitment on doing the best job and doing right by their clients. So they, convey values of honesty, hard work, sacrifice, and service to others. That's something that they really want to convey, not just to their children, but to their grandchildren as well. So when you look at how Wayne and Wendy view finances, they're very good stewards of their finances, right? They're thinking about their financial future. And at this point, as you may have seen on the screen, they're approaching retirement. So not only are they thinking about their future, but they're thinking about the future of their business. So they're glad because their son, William, is actually also an employee of the business, and they're grooming him to be able to take over the family business to keep that in the tradition. So business will be taken care of because William is going to be the successor for Wayne in the business. And in terms of their finances, they've connected with an attorney to create a trust, but they've also handled having their will in place, and they've identified that Whitney, their daughter, is going to be the co-trustee of the family trust. So William's role is going to be taking care of the family business. Whitney's role is going to be handling the dispersion of financial assets to the surviving family members throughout the family. So when you look at all of the different values that Wayne and Wendy have, they really wanted to be very intentional with how they convey their values, not just as a family and as a business, but also behind money. So because of the business, Wayne and Wendy, they weren't able to save for college for their two children. And, their two children were able to go to school, of course, with loans, but now they want to do better by their children. So both their kids have to establish 529 plans for their growing children. Wendy and Wayne both have set up retirement savings through the business, of which all of their employees are participating in. So Wayne and Wendy and William are all contributing to a retirement plan that's been set up through the business. Whitney is saving through her employer plan for retirement. So everybody's contributing towards retirement. They are so intentional that they are creating a budget and planning for family vacations. That's also something that's been important to them. So whenever they have major expenditures that they're considering, they budget and plan for them. They actually went on a Disney World trip last year, and they essentially budgeted and planned their trip around what they were able to pay. So they didn't overpay for their travel. The grandchildren get an allowance, so they're teaching them the value of a dollar. They're trying to teach them things like delayed gratification, encouraging them to only spend what they have, and again, prepare for things that they would like to purchase. So if there's a thing that they would like to have that is in excess of their allowance, they encourage them to save up for that item. And they're also heavy in philanthropy. They have charitable giving every year. So they're participating in different philanthropic events. So the Wilsons, again, they're connected and cohesive. The parent success is benefiting the entire family. And those are the values that Wendy and William have all kept in common, and that's what they have conveyed to their children. So that's the Wilsons, right? As you can see, kind of like a model family. On the extreme opposite end, we have the Millers. So the Millers are, Mitchell's grandfather. They got a fortune in oil. So it's a completely different situation. Instead of this being a family business passed on, this is money that is passed on. So as many millions that were passed on from Mitchell's grandfather were inherited to Mitchell. But what's not told in the family story is that Mitchell actually had a brother. Mitchell's brother was cut out of their father's will due to an old grudge. And now Mitchell and his brother are no longer speaking. So, of course, Mitchell's father isn't around to see the aftermath of that decision. So Mitchell and his brother, they used to be close, but they're no longer close. So now Mitchell is left with his family. So because there's always been plenty of money in the family, Mitchell has never had to work. And despite a Harvard education, he's never been motivated to work. So he and his wife, Mary, have an active social life centered around charitable balls. As far as for their children, you see Maureen was married to Melvin. That marriage is a little bit questionable because Melvin is known to be very involved or very curious about the Millers' inheritance and their net worth. And Melvin's a bit bossy over Maureen. Michael does not work and does not go to school. This is not to say that all wealthy kids grow up in this way, but there's something about growing up wealthy that can sometimes destroy ambition. The famous investor Warren Buffett is aware of this, as well as Bill Gates. Warren Buffett is known to say that he wants to be able to provide money for his children enough that they could do what they would like, but not too much money so they could do nothing. So we look at the Millers. The family members are disconnected. They're directionless, and whether it's a good thing or not, it could be because of the money that was left without the values. So as we look at the topic today, the topic is really how to plan, communicate, and execute the smooth transfer of assets and values from one generation to the next. For those who may not be familiar with who I am, that's your first time visiting. My name is Marcus Rather. I'm a financial advisor here in the Richmond area. All my contact information is there on the screen. Don't worry, I'm gonna flow through that because we're gonna double right back at that at the end. But for the purpose of our conversation today, the biggest thing is the talk. And as a young man, I can remember all the different talks that my parents gave and that we had. But in growing up, one of the talks was not about finance. It was not about money. It was about everything else that you could imagine as a kid. But it's hard to have the talk of the values, the talk of philosophies and perspectives around money. From a parent's perspective, the parents may not be sure how open they should be with their finances towards their kids, right? Kids should stay in the kids' place. You don't want to worry them. You don't want to burden them. You absolutely want to keep a certain level of innocence towards your children. But from a children's perspective, as we're talking about legacy and we're talking about money, for some children, we're not quite sure how to address the topic to parents, right? So you can see there's a little bit of discomfort or unfamiliarity in terms of having the talk of finance amongst families. So more from the parents' perspective, right? So number one, they may not want to commit leaving an inheritance at all. As my role as a financial advisor, I've seen many different scenarios and many perspectives of parents wanting to or not wanting to leave money to their children. Some things I've seen are, I want to leave my kids better off. Another view I've seen are my kids are better off than I am right now, especially for those who are approaching retirement, where there's a lot of uncertainty on, well, how much money am I going to need for retirement? Will I even have enough for retirement? My kids are making more now than I ever did in my professional career. So they have their own, they're fine, they have their family, they're established. And then when you add in the concern about the change of health, if you're someone that may be providing care or may have provided care for an elder one, you may be familiar with the costs associated with providing care for a sick individual and the cost of long-term care, whether it's receiving home health care or if it's going into a nursing home. So from a parent's view, you may be considering not wanting to leave an inheritance for many different reasons, mostly because you're concerned about your life and, how much money will you have, and possibly disinheriting your children because of money that you need to spend in retirement. Secondly, for some parents, there may be a fear that their children will fail to maximize their potential if they're depending on an inheritance. I've seen this in some cases as well, where the children aren't too concerned about their money habits and their financial habits because they know mom and dad have done a wonderful job of taking care of things, that there's an inheritance on the way. So whenever the parents exit the picture, there's something to be received, there's something to gain that can sustain that child's standard of living. So from a parent's view, coddling children, right? Maybe providing too much or not instilling those values could be an issue. And then third, they may fear the repercussions of estate planning decisions that they've made. So if you're experiencing something like the Millers, where one child you might get along with, another child you might not, or if the financial responsibilities of one child are greater than the others. Maybe one child doesn't make as much as the other child. Maybe one isn't as responsible as another. Or maybe one child has more responsibility, maybe more kids, or a different complete lifestyle that may warrant a larger share, a larger portion of wealth being passed on to one child versus the other. So there are a lot of different things from a parental view that could be a concern in terms of having the talk, especially that I've seen as a financial advisor. But then from a child's perspective, the children have their own concerns as well in terms of having the talk. For one, children never want to think of their parents passing away. I don't know which one is worse, either children thinking of parents passing away or parents thinking of their children passing away. But death is something that no one wants to think about, not many want to discuss, but unfortunately we all have to live through an experience. And it's very difficult to address the fact that someone will pass away. But then also thinking of the financial gain or the financial loss with that loss of a loved one. From a children's perspective, we don't want to impress on parents that we have something to gain from that loss. Children don't want to appear greedy. So it's perfectly normal for children to wonder if their parents have done their estate planning, but to broach the subject might make it sound like they're, just waiting for the parents to die, or they can get something out of that departure. And then third, we're busy. Children are busy, right? You got own lives that we're trying to lead, maybe kids that we're trying to raise, a lifestyle that we're trying to create. So children can also be busy with their own lives and they can't find the time to address general planning or generational planning. So the biggest solution to that is really just to break the barrier and have that conversation. The biggest success that you will have in creating a legacy is effective communication. So that's really the biggest answer to all of the questions in terms of having the talk and things along those lines is expressing that communication and having those talks as a family. So there are 4 simple steps. It's going to be actually funny how simple these are, but there are 4 simple steps to savvy generational planning. As you can see, 1 will be defining the family culture. I'm very excited for that step because I love that step. 2 is going to be setting your family goals. The 3rd is going to be learning financial concepts. And 4th is going to be preparing beneficiaries. So as you look at these steps, honestly, it's kind of like reading a book in a way. I'm starting to develop a new joy for reading books. I've never been a fan of reading books too long, don't really have the attention span. But I'm starting to get in the groove as part of the 75 soft challenge where I have to drink water every day. So take my sip. Drink water every day, follow a diet, read 10 pages of some non-fictional book. And I'm finding that there are many different types of books. And one of the books that I don't enjoy the most are those self-help books, those books where you have to read and then you got to do stuff. I like the reading, I like the challenging, and I don't really like the doing stuff. And if anything, this presentation is going to be one of those self-help books. You're going to get the information, but there's some work that you're going to have to do. Steps 1 and 2 are, steps that you can do not alone, but with your family. Steps 3 and 4 are essentially where you can have some financial guidance and some financial advice. Thank you for the shout out on the 75 soft. I am struggling every day. I feel one of them things. So thank you so much for the encouragement. So getting into step 1, defining your family culture. So what does this mean? What do you want the family culture to be? Whether you're someone who may at this point be entering into retirement and you may have grandchildren or great grandchildren, or if you're someone that's starting out and don't even have children at all, at any phase of life that you're in, it's not too late to define your family culture. And what you'll see on the next slide is that these values, right, what constitutes a culture, it doesn't all have to constitute just money, right? There are a lot of intangible things that are going to be equally important or equally as critical as the finance and the financial behaviors that follow behind them. So on the screen, there's a list of values or a list of examples. I encourage you to take some time to just think of, 5 might be a bit, but think of 3 that you can easily see on the screen that you can say, hey, I resonate with this value. For me, surprisingly, the most achievement is not mine. Accountability is. Accountability would be 1, and that's absolutely something that was passed on from my parents. Compassion, that might not be a surprise to most, but compassion is a value that I hold near and dear. Faith was something, there is something that was absolutely taught or impressed upon me from my parents and my grandparents. Responsibility and reliability, those would be the 5 that I can point out amongst many others. But take a moment to identify what values are special to you, but may also be special to your family, however large that family may be. The second part of that culture, traditions. Oh man, traditions. Gosh, I love traditions, especially around the holidays. So one big holiday tradition that I personally have, Thanksgiving and Christmas. As long as my parents are alive, as long as I have my brother alive, we will always have the tradition of getting together as a family. But one thing I do realize is that as we grow older, as families start to change, those traditions are going to adjust, right? I might not be able to go to my parents' house and just lie on the couch and watch TV and watch all the sports games during the holidays. Things may change. But what I will never forget are, how important family time is, how much, we value each other's company and value each other's presence and doing activities. So as you're looking at your family culture, identify what traditions are important to you individually, but also as a family collective, whether it's holidays that may be surrounded around religious beliefs or secular holidays. If it's birthdays, if you're someone that does it big for your birthday, you do big parties or you do giving or philanthropy type of events on your birthdays. If it's vacations, You know, my family's not known for vacations actually, but I have a brother that will spend an arm and a leg just for the experience of a vacation. If it's honoring your ancestors or any special family meals, no one can make my dad's spaghetti. No one can make my mom's meatloaf. I tried, it just doesn't work. So maybe there's some special family meals that are important. Whatever those things are, you want to consider that as a part of your family culture as we're identifying that thing. You want to also factor in models of behavior, right? Examples could be things like never tell a lie, whether it's a major lie or a white lie, keeping promises, working hard, delayed gratification. I can't emphasize that enough. Delayed gratification in the culture that we live in today, there aren't many things that lead to a delayed gratification. As an example, a year ago, I went into Macy's. I don't know if anybody remembers this concept called layaway, but I asked two employees of Macy's if they had layaway, and they looked at me like I was strange. I mean, they had no idea what the term layaway meant. So much so that somebody said, "Do you mean afterpay, where you get the item and you pay for it after you received it?" So delayed gratification could be a model behavior that is becoming a lost art in our society, but that could be very valuable to your family. Or also just simply doing the right thing, right? Treating others as you would want to be treated. These are examples of models of behavior that can attribute to your family culture. Step two would be setting the family goals. So we're going to go through a few examples of goals that you may consider to set for your family. So one would be supporting minor children. Now, whatever that support looks like is what you define. I enjoy having conversations with parents or even grandparents as they're thinking about ways to provide a future for the minors, because it always doesn't constitute going to college or education. Now, you see here estate planning to name a guardian. I would say that is critical in terms of young parents or growing parents, because if something were to happen to one parent or both, who is to be the provider or caregiver to your children? The lifestyle that you're looking to create, the things that they're participating in. If you want your children to have a sustained lifestyle, you want to consider who is going to be available to provide the guardianship for them. But equally important to the who will be the what or the how. So you also want to consider having the proper life insurance or assets to create that lifestyle. Many conversations I've had with parents, especially in the area of life insurance, they immediately think, hey, I want to take care of final expenses. I want to take care of death and burial implied. Don't want to leave my kids with bills. But oftentimes, depending on the age of the child, oftentimes what's overlooked is how much it costs to raise them, right? There are many studies that show the cost of raising children. And when you're thinking about the legacy, when you're thinking about the financial support of raising a child, you don't want to overlook how much they will need to grow and sustain, the activities, the events, or the life that you're looking to create while you're alive. So when you're thinking of supporting minor children, you want to factor in who would be the guardian, assuming both parents or parental figures are gone, and then what type of financial support would you like to provide for the children? In complement to raising them, is education important? That can go back to the values that you set for your culture. Is education important? Or do you promote something more along the lines of entrepreneurship? Or do you promote anything outside of that may not constitute going to college? Because every experience is different. I have parents that say, hey, I took out loans to go to school. They'll be fine taking out loans. I have some parents that say, I took out loans. I don't want my kids doing that at all. And then I have some parents that say, hey, my parents did everything they could to make sure that I could walk out of school without debt at all. I want to do the exact same thing. And then there's some people who say, I don't even believe in education. I don't even know if I believe in college. I started a business coming out of high school and I've done well for myself. So I just want to encourage whatever they're willing to do. I want to be able to be sure that they have all avenues or access to that. So whatever those values are, right? And whatever those values are, you want to set a goal to accomplish those things. So there are many different types of accounts that you can establish for minors, whether it's something like a 529 plan, a flexible savings college plan like a 529, or Maybe it's simply just a guardian account, a uniform gift to minor or a uniform trust to minor account, UGMA or UTMA. These types of accounts are for the benefit of the child. Education accounts, 529s, are more suitable for education. UGMA or UTMA serves any benefit that benefits the child, so whether it's education or not. So whatever that goal is, you want to identify, what are the best ways to accomplish it. If you're setting a goal for home ownership, right? Major goal for many families is home ownership. We're not addressing the specifics of these goals, just suggesting some goals that you might want to think about. But whatever that goal is, you want to identify the most effective ways of creating wealth to afford a down payment or to pay off a mortgage as you're owning or purchasing that home. A family bank, man, when I saw this one, I almost clenched my wallet because even for myself, the thought of a family member asking for a loan for myself, man, that was not something that was part of the talk that I had growing up. But maybe it should, right? As you're thinking about the values and you're thinking about the goals, think of how powerful it would be if you had your own family bank, right? However big that family is, if it's just between parents to children, maybe it extends out to grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, however large. But just imagine how powerful it would be to have a family bank, especially to fund business startups, where you could, from an investment standpoint, you're lending money, you get that money back plus interest. Who doesn't want that? Or maybe the business startup is an investment. You're an investor in the business and you share in the profits. Again, that's an investment component. And the greater value is, instead of that person who's starting the business or for general purpose, instead of them going and incurring debt that's going to impact their credit score, that's going to require a lot of hoops and things to qualify, they are going to family to get that. And you, as a family member participating, you get to reap the rewards of the benefit. So maybe family bank should be a goal that you set for your family as you think about bigger picture things in your family. Again, family vacations, that's another example of a goal. I think it will be more of my goal for my future family than what it was for me growing up. I have a grandmother that would never get on a plane even to this day. So you can kind of see the impacts of older generations to younger. But if family vacations are a goal that's important, you want to consider things along those lines. Regardless of the age that you're at, I think everyone will enjoy a life of retirement, whether you're looking at retirement in the next few years, or if you're a young millennial or even younger than me and you're looking at the life ahead. At some point in time in this life, you will experience a period where you don't want to work or you want to live the life that you want to live. And that's how we define retirement. So with those goals, you want to consider, what's the attitude or behaviors that you have towards IRAs and retirement plans. Maybe those are going to be the better strategies to accomplish those goals for retirement. Long-term care, as I mentioned before, if you are someone who has experience providing care for an elder or a loved one, or if you are at a phase where you're starting to get to a point where you need assistance, you want to have goals in mind or start to have conversations with family on the type of care that you would like to have if you needed it, or you would like to provide if you're wanting to have to care for anyone else in your family. And things that you want to consider: if long-term care is important, if you want to be able to afford to go to a facility, if you want to be able to afford to stay home and receive that care, different things you want to consider are long-term care insurances. Or maybe there's assets that you have, savings that you have can be earmarked specifically for long-term care. But long-term care is absolutely a goal you want to factor in as you're thinking in the realm of retirement. And if you're someone that just loves giving back, maybe philanthropy would be a goal that you consider for your family, right? Taking part in any type of missions or any ministries, maybe through church or any different organizations. You want to identify important causes, right? What is the cause that's important to you that may be important as a family? And then you want to set up a program that's planned or designed for efficient giving. So all of these that we just went through are examples of goals that you can consider for your family. Step 3 is exactly where I come in, right? So step 1 was values, identify those values. Step 2, with those values, what are the goals that are going to attribute to those? The step 3 is where I get all excited and I'm like, hey, this is where I can come in. So learn the financial concepts, and you'd be surprised because I'm sure a lot of you have either shuddered or cringed when you saw this on the screen. The number one thing for every generation is budgeting. The number one thing that you saw just now, budgeting. I always preach that a budget should be a reflection of your financial priorities, right? I know many people have different perceptions, different demeanors behind the word budget. But if you've met with me, if you consulted with me and you've heard me talk about budget, or if I've asked, hey, what's your budget? Do you follow this inflow and outflow? What I look for is a balance between needs, wants, and wishes. So often when I mention the word budget, the first thing people say, yeah, I could do better, right? I could budget better. I can cut these things out. And that's not always what a budget should mean, in my opinion. I think a budget, as I said before, should be reflective of the needs, your wants, and your wishes in life. What good is it to sacrifice all the joy to only live based on necessity, right? Life is worth living. You work hard, you make a good living. You should be able to afford yourself nice things. With that being said, we also want to be good stewards of the resources that we receive. So when you're looking at the disciplines behind budget, and when I think of a few clients that have what I consider a perfect budget, they're budgets that accommodate for those needs, those wants, and those wishes in their individual lives. Whether they have a lot of debt or have a little debt, whether they make a lot or they make considerably a little, whatever, it's all subjective. But the budgets that I've seen that have been the most successful were the ones where they were disciplined and they stuck to the balance, right? They knew exactly how much needed to go for what they need. They were able to afford what they want, and they were hitting their savings goals, and where applicable, they were able to afford the wishes. So a budget is going to keep you on track, and a budget should encourage your savings. The second thing, man, credit. This is something that I wish I would have learned a lot more about before I became a financial professional. How to use credit wisely. And I'll give my own ignorant testimony. I had no idea coming out of high school to college that student loans were loans. That was not how it was impressed upon me. How it was impressed upon me was, hey, fill out this form, you'll get money to go to school. Had no idea that student loans or refund checks were loans that you were going to have to pay back. So credit is something I absolutely wish I would have learned more, or how to use more effectively coming out of high school and growing into adulthood. So credit, how to use credit wisely. I'm not going to say credit is a bad thing. Credit can actually be a good thing. If anything, in my encouragement, as we're talking about financial behaviors, credit offers certain things that debit does not. Cash is always king, but you have rewards. You have reward points. You get cash back with certain uses of credit cards. Maybe, right, with good discipline, maybe it's to your advantage to use credit on certain purchases, right, to get the cash back, to get the rewards that can attribute to travel, right, travel cards, reward points, so on and so forth. So credit is absolutely something that you want to consider on how to use effectively, how to minimize the borrowing cost and maximize the efficiency, but also how to boost your credit rating. I think all of us on this call will love how to learn more about taxes, right? There are many different types of taxes, whether it's sales tax, whether it's income tax, state applicable taxes, property taxes. We live in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They tax just about everything, right? So, let taxes be one of those areas that you're looking to learn more about, ways to minimize taxes through things like pre-tax deductions, contributing to retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, thrift savings plans, maybe after-tax contributions to maximize tax-free assets in retirement, but also being aware of tax code changes. The last overhaul in the tax code came in 2017, and those are due to sunset in 2026. So somewhere between now and the near future, we're going to see some other change when it comes to taxes. So let taxes be one of those things that you're seeking to learn more and be efficient with as you're earning income and saving for the future. IRAs and retirement plans. Again, which strategy is going to make the most sense for you? Whether it's putting more into an employer plan, maybe doing some on your own through an IRA. But you want to be familiar with how much you can contribute. Every year, they generally increase the maximum amount that you're able to set aside into these vehicles, whether they're IRAs, 401ks, PSP, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure not only what type of account that you're putting it in, but you also want to know when's the best time to withdraw it. There's going to be a due date. If you're putting money in on a pre-tax basis, there's this concept called required minimum distribution. So depending on your age, you may be required to take money out now or at some point in time in the future. So you want to be familiar with the rules that are associated with their proper plan. But in addition to the type of retirement account, you also want to be efficient with your investment philosophy, right? There are more than just one way to invest. You have trading, which can be day trading, frequent trading. You can trade stocks, you can trade bonds. You can have a buy and hold strategy where you just buy the same thing, let it sit, let it grow, and over time, you know you're going to be successful, or any different variation in between. But equally important to understanding the philosophy and the disciplines behind investing, you also want to understand the relationship between risk and reward, and understanding the time value of money. Time is your strongest asset when it comes to investing. So allow us to be the guide in influencing and directing your investment philosophy. And step 4, allow us to work with the future generations of your family to prepare heirs and the executors for what to expect. And again, preparation, it all goes back to that one word, communication, right? Communicate with your heirs, communicate with your family, what to do first when things happen, right? There are a lot of different legal documents that I'm sure you expected me to go through today, but legal documents like a trust, legal documents like a will, advanced healthcare directive, power of attorney. Those documents, not only do you want to have them in place, but what good is it to have it in place and not know where to find it when you need it, or not know who to appoint for what? As we saw from the Mitchells or the Wilsons, they communicated, who was going to be the successor of the family business, who was going to be responsible for distributing the assets when mom and dad are gone. So you want to communicate what to do first, right? Connect with the right professionals to identify how to properly retitle certain accounts, especially with the rules pertaining to retirement accounts and inheriting. You absolutely want to be aware of the best strategies for inheriting money to just, minimize your tax responsibility and tax liability, how to take withdrawals in a tax advantage manner, but also how to manage inheritance, potentially preserve and protect assets for the future. So it's not hard, right? Everything that I've expressed today is not hard. It's not challenging. It may be uncomfortable, right? But it's not hard. So the best way to start is through just simply having that conversation. So what I can help with, one, facilitate the family meetings. If you're going to embark upon this journey, you don't have to do it alone. Clearly, I don't want to be too involved or overstep my boundaries in identifying your values and your goals, but I can absolutely help with the execution of, accomplishing those goals and identifying what areas of financial literacy you may need. Step 2, you want to help family members learn important financial concepts. And part 3, you want to prepare inheritors to receive and manage their inheritance. So call to action, right? So that was reading the book, me regurgitating all that information to you. You got to, hear, you got to learn. Now this is part of that self-help book where you got to do the action. So easiest way to take action is by scanning the QR code. On the QR code, that will bring you to my Calendly website, which it shows my availabilities to have a conversation with you or your family, right? Allow me to be a part of that conversation. If it's breaking the ice, and this is the first conversation that you're going to have with family about values, about your finances, about what's important, or if it's a part of the conversations you've already been having, you're just bringing in a third party to expand the context of your conversation. I want you to take that action and start to incorporate all these different ideas for your family generational plan. So with that, I've been running for a minute. I'll check the Q&A box. Now is the perfect time to ask any questions. And if not, I will take it that everything was simple to understand and I did a great job. So I'll pat myself on the back. I was preaching. And I will bid you all a great afternoon. Please keep in mind, I will be following up with all of the attendees. You are more than welcome to send in any questions by email or by phone or text. And I thank you again for your time this afternoon, and I bid you all a good afternoon. Have a good one.